Hello and welcome to this Thursday edition of the World Report with me, Arjun Mahendran. Let's take a look at what's making headlines around the world. Israel and Hamas agreed to a temporary ceasefire, opening up part 2 and 15 months of intense fighting in Gaza that has killed tens of thousands of Palestinians. The agreement, which the Israeli cabinet is yet to approve, by the way, is set to take effect Sunday and see the phased release of 33 Israeli hostages as well as Palestinian prisoners, while Israel will put its troops from densely populated areas in Gaza. US President Joe Biden took credit for the months-long negotiations, but analysts also pointed to the incoming Trump administration's efforts to pressure Israel on the deal.
دولة قطر وجمهورية مصر العربية والولايات المتحدة الأمريكية الإعلان عن نجاح جهود الوساطة المشتركة بوصول طرفي النزاع في قطاع غزة إلى اتفاق بشأن تبادل الأسرى والرهائن والعودة إلى الهدوء المستدام وصولا لوقف دائم لإطلاق النار بين الجانبين.
Meanwhile, a peace deal for Ukraine would take months to work out, advisors to Donald Trump have said. Now, this is as per reports. While the president-elect has promised a quick resolution to the nearly 3-year war, analysts as well as his associates now forecast a drawn-out timeline. Hopes for a deal within Trump's first 100 days in office are way too optimistic, a former U.S. ambassador to Kiev said. As Trump's inauguration approaches, Ukraine is responding more aggressively to attacks on its energy infrastructure. Kiev, in fact, this week launched its biggest aerial assault on Russian territory since the invasion. Ukraine doesn't have much left to lose at this point, a Russian security expert said, so they can just go take ahead and take the gloves off. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is set to meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, now this to sign a historic 100-year partnership aimed at deepening security ties between the countries. Now, the agreement focuses on military collaboration, maritime security, and making the UK a key partner in Ukraine's energy sector, critical mineral strategy, and green steel production. The treaty and accompanying political declaration will be presented to the British Parliament in the coming weeks. After half a century in politics, Joe Biden bid farewell in an Oval Office address. The outgoing US president delivered his farewell address, seizing what may be his final opportunity to reshape America's grim views on his term before he departs the White House. Joe Biden opened his speech by taking credit, in fact, for the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas, delivering what could be his final chance to influence public perception of his presidency. Biden warned of an oligarchy of the ultra-wealthy taking root in America. Russian President Vladimir Putin may soon have discussions with newly elected US President Donald Trump, during which he will reportedly demand that Ukraine never join NATO. But Putin's position also contradicts Trump's stated desire to end the war as quickly as possible and may be aimed at granting Russia more flexibility, in fact, in negotiations. Reports further noted that Russia's advances in eastern Ukraine specifically have been slow and have come, quote-unquote, at a heavy cost. Donald Trump's pick for Attorney General Pam Bondi insisted at a Senate confirmation hearing Wednesday that Trump had been targeted by years of investigations. But she pledged that she would not politicize or weaponize the Justice Department if confirmed as the country's chief federal law enforcement officer. Now, the statement Wednesday echoed Trump's claims that the Justice Department had in fact been weaponized against him. The US Bureau of Industry and Security has removed 3 key Indian nuclear entities from its entity list. These organizations, the Bhabha Atomic Research Center, Indira Gandhi Center for Atomic Research, and the Indian Rare Earths Limited, are no longer subject to export restrictions. The removal of these Indian entities marks a key shift in US-India nuclear cooperation, potentially opening the door, some would say, for greater collaboration between the two countries in the civil nuclear sector. In a move that's raising tensions between the US and China, Beijing's Commerce Ministry, in fact, has announced that it has added 4 American companies to its so-called unreliable entity list. These companies are accused of being involved in arms sales to Taiwan, a region that China considers part of its own territory. The blacklisted companies, including Pacific Rim Defense and Summit Technologies, now face serious penalties. They'll all be banned for importing or exporting goods to and from China, and also prohibited from making new investments in the country. This move signals a sharp escalation in the ongoing tensions over Taiwan and the US-China relations as a whole. At least 78 dead bodies have been retrieved from a discontinued gold mine in South Africa, where police cut off food and water supplies for months together, in what trade unions called a horrific crackdown on desperate people trying to eke out a living. Police said on Wednesday they have ended a rescue operation and still believe they have brought out all the survivors and retrieved all the bodies from the abandoned mine southwest of Johannesburg or Joburg. Turkish Airlines will now resume its flight to Damascus in Syria next week after a halt of more than a decade. Now, the development comes after a visit by a delegation of Syria's new Turkey-backed rulers. The announcement followed a visit earlier in the day by Syria's new foreign minister, Assad al-Shibani, who in fact held talks with Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and other top officials in the Turkish capital, Ankara. Al-Shibani is a part of Syria's new de facto authorities under Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or the HTS. It's an Islamist group behind the lightning insurgency that ousted ex-President Bashar Assad in December and ended his family's decades-long rule. In the U.S., Louisiana authorities have begun clearing homeless encampments in New Orleans on Wednesdays, relocating many warehouse facilities ahead of the Super Bowl hosted by the city next month. Governor Jeff Landry framed the sweep as part of a move to secure New Orleans, especially in the aftermath of a New Year's Day Islamic State group-inspired attack which killed 14 people. Blazing Los Angeles wildfires have forced thousands of students to relocate to other schools. Students from 2 elementary schools that burned down in the Palisades fires arrived Wednesday for their first day of class at 2 other LA campuses, where their classes are being held temporarily. The education disruptions come as the city grieves at least 25 deaths, thousands of destroyed homes, and 163 square kilometers of scorched land.
We have 2 schools that were either completely or almost completely burned. These are 2 elementary schools, Palisades Elementary and Marquez Elementary. Both of these schools are in the Palisades area. So there was actually capacity in these schools that allowed for us to relocate the entire student population onto their campuses. You know, it's going to take probably 2 to 2.5 years for us to rebuild those schools. During that period of time, these are the closest schools to the schools they used to attend, close to the community neighborhoods of the parents. It's the best possible accommodation for us.
Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai, Apple's Tim Cook, and other top tech leaders will attend President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration on Monday. Now, tech CEOs Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg will also be attending the inauguration ceremony. TikTok CEO Xiaozi Chu has reportedly been invited to sit in a position of honor on the dais, in fact, as a location typically reserved for former president, family members, and other important guests. Jordanians took to the streets Wednesday to celebrate the announcement of a ceasefire between Hamas and Israel in Gaza. Hundreds of men and women carried Palestinian flags and photos of Hamas leaders chanted in support of Palestinians. Many described the ceasefire deal as a victory, in fact, for the Palestinian resistance group in the Gaza Strip. The rallies took place in several Jordanian cities and in the Palestinian refugee camps.
اليوم لنشاركهم الفرحة. العالم الإسلامي كله معكم، شعوب الأرض الحرة كلها معكم. لا تنظروا للحكومات، نحن الشعوب لم تتوقف دموعنا، لم تتوقف أموالنا لكم. لكم، تبرعاتنا لكم، جميلكم في رقابنا إلى يوم الدين. يا ملح الأرض، يا أكابر الأرض، يا خير أهل الأرض، يا أهل غزة. مبارك مبارك عليكم، مبارك عليكم النصر.
Millions of Southern Californians were on the edge as winds began picking up during the final round of the dangerous fire weather forecast for the region, where two massive blazes have killed at least 25 and destroyed thousands of homes already. One day after firefighters got a reprieve with lighter winds than expected, gusts on Wednesday were hitting up to 35 miles per hour on the coast and valleys and 55 miles per hour in the mountains before dawn. Eaton Fire's incident meteorologist James White said the weather observed so far has been good, and it's definitely good news. Take a look.
I'll go ahead and give you a quick update on the fire. Up around the north side of the fire, everything continued to look really well. All the way up around Mount Wilson, the crews are continuing to go direct as possible, improve our containment lines, mop up. We're using the helicopters today for any hot spots interior. We have infrared flights several times a day that we're continuing to utilize to put out any heat that comes up inside the fire perimeter. We are still within a red flag warning. We are confident that this fire will stay within the current footprint that it is in.
Officials at Hawaii Volcanoes National Park are bracing for crowds eager to get a glimpse of the lava fontaining from an eruption. Now, the eruption that began on the 23rd of December in a crater at the summit of Kilwa volcano has paused periodically. It resumed Wednesday morning as a small and sluggish flow and then increased into a fountain that appeared to be 60 meters high. The Hawaiian Volcano Observatory has said it's possible fountain heights will increase as much as rather more gas-rich lava erupts. Another major fire that began almost 3 weeks ago in the Huapi National Park, one of the country's most beautiful reserves, has already consumed more than 9,884 acres of land. The Huapi National Park, which covers about 710,000 hectares, is known for Huapi, a lake of the glacial origin, and the tourist city of San Carlos de Belroque.
No nos dio tiempo nada, no se sacó nada, no se sacó heladera, apenas un televisor. No pensamos que iba a ser tan arrasador el incendio, de dar tantas vueltas, un viento muy cambiante que hizo que de repente no haya ni una motobomba ni nada que pueda defender nuestras casas. ¿Qué va a hacer?
It's time we step into a short break. I'll see you on the other side. Welcome back. You're watching the World Report on NDTV. Scott Bessent, President-elect Trump's pick for Treasury Secretary, has pledged to ensure the dollar remains the world's reserve currency. In prepared Senate testimony, Bessent emphasized the need for productive investments to usher in a new economic golden age while criticizing wasteful spending. He also called for making Trump's 2017 tax cuts permanent and strengthening critical supply chains. JPMorgan Chase on Wednesday posted record annual profit as its dealmakers and traders reaped a windfall from rebounding markets in the fourth quarter. The bank also forecast net interest income, or the difference between what it earns on loans and pays out on deposits, for 2025 above analysts' expectations. Now, this despite issuing repeated warnings that it may not sustain the level of growth. JPMorgan's strong results bode well for the banking sector, which is seeing a revival in deal-making and fundraising activities as the US Fed cuts interest rates to bolster the economy. Goldman Sachs, meanwhile, also posted a rise in the fourth quarter profit, benefiting from robust performance in its investment banking and trading units. A Toyota subsidiary, Hino Motors, has agreed to plead guilty and pay over $1.6 billion in fines to settle an emissions fraud case. The U.S. Justice Department, along with the FBI and the Environmental Protection Agency, announced the resolution of criminal and civil violations tied to falsified emissions data. This settlement reflects America's ongoing crackdown on corporate environmental misconduct. TikTok is reportedly preparing to shut down its US operations on Sunday, impacting 170 million American users, as a federal ban is set to take effect unless the Supreme Court, of course, intervenes. Meanwhile, reports suggest President-elect Donald Trump may issue an executive order to delay the ban for up to 90 days. The app's Chinese parent company ByteDance is required by US law to divest TikTok to prevent the ban, which also prohibits US companies from supporting the app. The US Department of Transportation has sued Southwest Airlines over chronically delayed flights, accusing the carrier of operating unrealistic schedules that disrupted passengers' travels. The lawsuit seeks maximum civil penalties and highlighted delays on key routes in 2022. That's 3 years ago. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg said this sends a clear message about enforcing passenger protections. Frontier Airlines was also fined $650,000 for similar issues. According to Canalys data, Apple has dropped to third place in China's smartphone market for 2024, overtaken by Huawei and Vivo. iPhone sales fell 17% for the year, including a 25% plunge in only the fourth quarter, marking Apple's biggest ever decline, in fact, in China. Analysts cite stiff competition, lack of AI features, and rising demand for local brands as reasons for Apple's diminishing market share in one of its key global markets. With an impending ban of TikTok looming, many users of the popular video sharing app are in fact heading to alternative platforms, including Rednote. So-called TikTok refugees are now flocking to that platform, largely due to its looking so similar to the ByteDance-owned app. Rednote has become the top downloaded app in the US this month and has in fact quickly carved out a niche by combining e-commerce built around short video posts. In other words, it's very much like TikTok, albeit with a different name. However, appearance isn't the only thing Rednote has in common with TikTok. Both are in fact owned by Chinese-based firms. India's automakers plan to launch nearly a dozen new electric vehicle models in 2025, despite slowing global demand. The country's EV market leader, Tata Motors and JSW MG Motor, along with global giants like Hyundai, VinFast and Build Your Dreams or BYD, will showcase innovations at this year's New Delhi Auto Show. EV sales in India grew 20% in 2024, outpacing overall car sales, in fact, but high prices and limited charging infrastructure remain the biggest barriers. The government aims to boost EV adoption to 30% by 2030. Meta may need to quote-unquote roll back or pause some features in India due to an antitrust directive that bans WhatsApp from sharing user data with Meta for advertising purposes. The company is challenging the Competition Commission of India's November directive, which accused it of abusing its dominance and coercing WhatsApp users into accepting a privacy policy that allegedly expanded data collection and sharing. The CCI imposed a $24.5 million fine and a 5-year ban on WhatsApp's data sharing practice in India, which could affect Meta's ability to personalize ads on Facebook and even on Instagram. Microsoft has launched Copilot Chat, a pay-as-you-go AI service that helps businesses automate tasks like market research and strategy planning using GPT-4. While basic features are free, advanced options like transcribing team calls and creating PowerPoint slides require a $30 monthly subscription. Microsoft is betting on this service to drive AI adoption as it ramps up investment in its infrastructure, projected to cost $80 billion this fiscal year. Canadian rapper Drake has filed a defamation lawsuit against Universal Music Group, the record label he and rival Kendrick Lamar shared, over the latter artist's diss track, Not Like Us. The lawsuit filed in a New York federal court comes shortly after the Canadian rapper born Aubrey Drake Graham withdrew a legal challenge that he made against UMG and Spotify, alleging they artificially inflated the popularity of Lamar's track. UMG has responded by calling Drake's claims illogical. Best-selling British author Neil Gaiman has released a statement Wednesday denying he had ever engaged in non-consensual sex after a magazine this week published allegations from several women accusing him of sexual assault. The 64-year-old author of the Sandman comic book series and the novel American Gods was responded to an article detailing allegations of assault, abuse and coercion leveled by 8 women. Well, that's all we have for you today. Take care and have a wonderful day.